So, I had a couple ideas for what I was going to work on today. There's two sections that need some of my attention. So, the end of down dog, the ankle mobility section. Let's see here. This is B shoulders. Tight was 4. Interesting hip section, so I'll make this 4. This gets to be worked on. I don't have a lot of photos, but maybe this would be interesting to look at. The other thing I was working on, a lot to do with handstanding. These are the main sections. These are I'm writing a lot about all the details, the stuff that you need to know for your general understanding of handstands. And then we have way down here the hand and forearm stretching, which gets to be really worked on. So this is all the variations that will be added, and then of course all the work we do to make forearms and handstands better. You can see there's plenty of stuff to do. If you can see here, these are all of the pages that of photos we need to take. With my son's wedding, we really got behind on photos for the last month, and these are things that all get to be done. This is just the handstanding section. So once those photos are done, it's a lot easier to fill in sections. So what that would look like is this here so you can see it. This is the main file we have for everything. This is the photos section, and these are the 10 sections of the whole book. So when you go to all the variations, these are how everything's broken down. And then when I take the photos, they all get put here, and these are the ones that we don't need, or normally this is full of stuff that needs to get processed. So weather vane was the other thing I thought we could look at today, because we have quite a few pictures that show a lot, and I have a lot that needs to still get taken. But this conversation of the adduction and internal rotation, the standing hip, the collapse of the arch that pulls the knee in, and then the subsequent distortion of the spine that every single person who ever does weather vane does to not fall over. So that's a whole big conversation that is awesome, and I can't wait to do it, but I don't have all of the photos. But how you figure out what photos you need, of course, is you write the section. So all this is, we're way down the line in terms of like sketching stuff out. But so here's the weather vane section. This is the other thing I thought we could look at today. So you have the main heading, and this is the pose. We're also going to talk about lunging a little bit. If I can understand lunging, then I understand weather vane, vice versa. How we define weather vane is it's a standing lunge it's a standing front splits with the front knee bent. So it's a lunge where you pick the back leg up. The design is to keep the knee very bent, and to keep the chest as high as possible up to about horizontal. This is why we use blocks. And now we have the standing leg gluteal in its longest position, and the free leg, the trailing leg gluteal, in its shortest position. Okay, how do you teach this position? Well, if we look at that photo before, there's all this distortion that is actually reinforcing problems that we don't want you to have. So if I'm in weather vane, I want you to look more like this, where, okay, with the foot straight, my knee is slightly to the outside of the foot, the pelvis is centered over the foot, and the spine, you have the choice to have the spine be neutral and the pelvis square. Squareness is just neutral, but you can sort of think of squareness as if I was on a mat, the front edge of the mat and my pelvis is parallel the whole time. And you can see in this photo, she's leaning without the knee distortion. There we go. In this photo, the pelvis, although it's horizontal, what's happening is this hip is way in front of this hip. So she's standing on her left leg. The pelvis is actually opened to the open side, in this case, the right side. And so there's some hip rotation that we're trying to avoid. And then, of course, the subsequent spinal flexion to not fall over. All right. Part of the fun of writing the book is, like, this is a 3-hour conversation in the teacher training. And so what we do is I'll define what weather vane is, I'll have everybody do it, and then we actually talk about warrior pose, particularly warrior 1 and 2. Warrior 3 is stupid. Really all warriors are kind of dumb, so. And the standard setup where you put the heel in line with the back heel in line with the front foot, and then we have this little piece of tape on under his knee to show, okay, to sort of help people see what the direction is, directionally what's happening with that femur relative to the foot. We get to talk about this. So we talk about warrior. We talk about how that impacts your feet, which is one of the things we get to take more photos of in warrior and in weather vane. And then we get to see what is happening with the standing leg and differentiating between standing on 2 feet and standing on 1 leg. So this section is kind of already drawn out. Because this is sort of differentiating we're trying to get control over the various body parts. So I need to understand what's happening with the various body parts. And if I don't understand what's happening with the various body parts, then, I'm not, I can't, first of all, I can't measure stuff, but I won't understand the position. So pictures that get to be taken here, if you sort of imagine somebody in warrior, just a regular warrior, and they pivot on their heel and rotate their foot in and out. So the entire body, including the front knee, stays the same, but I point my foot in and out. This creates the same rotation. It's called shin rotation. My knee hasn't relocated, but the heel, by pivoting on the heel, my foot can point out or my foot can point in. And this is the big distinction that we get in weather vane that then informs all other standing positions, particularly standing on 1 leg positions, but why we instruct what we instruct in squatting, and of course in things like lunges. But then I can keep my foot in the same position. These pictures need to get taken, and we might take them this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon. Wednesday afternoons have been for photos for most of the last 6 years. If I keep my foot in the same spot, I fix it, but I let my knee pendulum in and out. This is actually creating a very similar distortion and similar problems. And so now I have the variable of, where are my feet relative to one another? Then I have the variable of what direction is my front foot pointing relative to my back foot? And then the variable of where is my knee, like an inverted pendulum, relative to the foot? All of that needs to get controlled for us to have what we would call a neutral knee. So I'm not perfect. This photo isn't perfect. And one of the reasons we get to retake this is when she's standing, this isn't actually right on the hip. I taped it on her leg when she had her knee bent. And so this actually is pretty accurate. And you can see that this angle isn't perfectly in line with the green line on the floor. That's actually what we want, and we will differentiate that when we get into the standing position. We'll call this, with this open warrior 2E hips position, well, what we're after. The foot's in line, but the knee is just a little to the outside, and it's directed more laterally towards the outside, towards the pinky toe. You can see how it's lifting her arch, which is another thing that we want, particularly as we age, our feet flatten. And for those of you with flat feet, the reason that you blow out the inside of your knees as the arch collapses, the knee falls in. We get to make the case that this is neutral. And you can see that there's some complexity here. This is be the hardest section to fully illustrate. But if my foot is fixed and the knee is falling in, we get to call this a problem. So in the position itself, first we'll talk about, we'll change the order of this, but the big issue, of course, is that when, and another thing we don't have pictures of, when people are in weather vane, they really don't want to look like this. They don't want to have crinkles in their lower back. They don't want to have their chest up. How I was taught this position, which wasn't called weather vane, was of course you're trying to get this leg as high as possible, and you bring your face as close to your shin as possible, and you support yourself by taking your hands on the floor and as wide as possible. So you're shortening your arms, bringing your chest towards your shin, head low, and it's like a standing front splits. And all the variations, we would often bend the knee to protect hamstrings, but there was no other reason for it. And what we've created with weather vane is this is the standard, this or even more bend. And all of the whys are, we get to make that case. So as my head goes lower, it makes sense. My head, so if this is my spine, if this is your spine, and this is your spine on weather vane. In weather vane, your head is on one end of your spine, and your arms are on that same end of your spine. And so if you're looking at the blocks and you're reaching for the blocks, the very first thing to do is, instead of having all these shirt crinkles in your back, you flex your spine, you get all the shirt crinkles in your belly. And of course, if you sort of imagine the difference of holding a 5-foot stick, hold the end of a 5-foot stick and reach it out in front of you so the 5 feet of the stick is 5 feet in front of you. You're just holding the very end and the stick is perfectly horizontal. How easy is it to hold that stick up versus holding a length of 5 feet of rope, where you hold the end of the rope and it immediately slouches down to the floor, and most of it's on the floor. Of course, it's going to be easier to hold the rope, even if they are equivalent weights. So this increases the leverage on the thing we're actually trying to get to, which is this standing leg gluteal. The reason this is such a magnificent gluteal is that she does this work. We intentionally load it, we make it hard, and of course, the reason her back is healthy and my back is healthy is we've done all this work too. Protect the spine as we work on the hips. Part of how I ruined my spine is in the process of theoretically opening up my hips. I was slouching in every position, and I was really just opening my spine. So that's a problem. So we have some common-ish problems, but then we have the two hip controls. So this is that knee falling in or out position, and then we have how we distort with both rotation, side flexion, and of course some extra slouching to keep our head over the midline. So this is a better example of what most people do. Her head is perfectly over the midline, and her knee is over her heel. And this is an instruction you'll often get in positions like warrior and lunges and squats. Take the knee over the heel, and there's a rationale for that. What we're making the case is that particularly when you're balancing on one leg, this is really putting the knee at risk, but it's completely, you can see it's deforming the position. So what Andrea is doing, she's staying very upright so that you can see. Most of you with your hands on the block or the floor would bend your elbows, so there would be that spinal flexion. But I just want you to see that her pelvis, her right hip is lower than her left hip. Her left hip is way in front of her right hip. and there's this strong side flexion. Look how open her right side is and how crunched up her left side is. This is the spinal compromise. Her head should be over here if her spine was neutral, but because she's balancing in the position, you naturally lean your body over and distort to keep the position. And it's so much harder to be in a position that looks like this, where the spine is, she's very upright, as you can see. And she's having to hold these for a long time. So, of course, magic of photography. We just get a little chair and she puts a finger on it. So now the knee is pushing out. The standing hip is way to the outside. And, of course, what this means is her pelvis is over the foot. So one of the things that we get to look at when we're talking about this is that gets to be added to this is that, as you can see in these two pictures, what we're trying to illustrate is that when I'm standing over 2 feet, my pelvis is centered over the space in between the feet. When I'm standing over 1 foot, the pelvis is centered over that standing foot. So this is all part of this. Okay, when I shift from a position like a lunge or weather vane, and I shift all of my weight to the front foot, and I start flexing in the hip and balancing forward, we get to pay attention to that, and then this will keep and if we're conscious about the shape of our spine, forcing our spine to stay neutral when the hips are flexed, then I must do all this stuff with the arch of my foot, with the position of my knee, aka shin rotation, and of course this abduction, feeling, loading, and keeping short, relatively short, these lines of abduction. And of course, this is in the original writing of the stuff. This would be a list that I would have made, where important metrics, measures, things to think about. Of course, we want the spine neutral. This is that distortion. The difference between having your hands high and low, which is part of this slouching problem. The direction your foot is pointing, we really get in trouble when we start doing variations. And of course, all of this is the that tendency for your head to want to stay in the middle or lean to the, in this case, the outside. Standing knee, that's the shin rotation. How much the knee is bent, hip height. You can see her head is kind of about the same side, or maybe height, or a little bit higher than the hips. You know, I have short legs and a long spine, so when I'm in these positions, really arching up with my hands on blocks in the second tallest dimension, I can actually get my chest higher than my pelvis with my knee a little more bent than this, but not like crazy bent. And so this variable, how high the chest is relative to the pelvis. And of course, we tend to, because the hands are on the blocks, we tend to shift our weight way forward. We want the weight back because the purpose of the position is to isolate quads and gluteals. This is all about that squareness. The square horizontally is the front of the left pelvic crest the same height as the right pelvic crest. The square front to back is the right pelvic crest and the left pelvic crest the same distance from the front of the mat. And then the side flexion, the way the spine then distorts. And then, of course, we have all the trailing leg stuff, least important part of the whole process, but we do get to talk about it because if this leg is just sort of hanging out, it's a really great standing gluteal bit of work. But the reason we define it as a front splits, where the standing knee is bent, is that when this bun is really fighting to be shorter with the weight of your free leg, then all of a sudden the standing gluteal is working way harder. So free hip is an extension, standing hip is in flexion. These muscles, the weight of this leg is making this hip work harder. And so we use the front splits piece to really make the standing hip way stronger. And of course, we're doing this all while protecting hamstrings and back. So you can see there's a lot for me to work on. I have anything that I have in brackets. This is one of the things that I do. You can see just how many headings we have here. And what the headings do, of course, is they help me get my brain wrapped around what are all the things that, what are the things that we get to talk about. So we always talk about the why and the how and problems, but the how to sort of, you can see this, the organization, the mental organization is super, super important. For me, I write these out, I make them headings. So I sort the headings first before I ever write the things in. I write as much as I can, but I find that the putting the pictures in, so visualizing what pictures I need, and often this is at least a 2-part process. So I take the pictures. Oh, we need some pictures from the warrior to weather vane process. This is how weather vane was. Our version of weather vane was really invented. It was specifically for a hamstrings tear that I had gotten. I'm like 3 to 6 months into this hamstring tear. I'm super frustrated by it. And so this is the thing we developed, this very simple sort of bent knee warrior 3 kind of a thing, going from warrior 1 to warrior 3, this transition. And okay, I take the pictures of it, and then from the pictures, I can start writing stuff out. But then I write the stuff out and I realize, like, oh no, I need 17 more pictures. I need a close-up of the butt and whatever, right? So we take the pictures, and then I come over to the pad, and that's where I fill in what we need. This, if you'll see, this is Postures 2.0, pages 1 through 221. For ref, just so you know what that means, the documents are so big that Word stops working. And so I've broken the book into 3. I'm going to have to break it up into more, but just so I sort of knew what was happening, I broke it into 3 documents. This is Postures 1. In Postures 1, we look at a lot of this is the beginning. This is all of the writing. It's 41,000 words on everything from stress to meditation to breathing. You can see we just have all of these things to sort of explore. Really, really important stuff. Then we have Postures 2, and this is how it's broken up in the teacher training. Postures 1 is where we talk about this sort of, we distinguish like what is stress, what is relaxation, what is getting stronger, how do you make things more or less difficult, what is difficulty versus complexity, say. So something that's easy and simple, how are those different? And how do we define level 1, 2, and 3? All that is in Postures 1. We spend a lot of time, this is a lot of lecture, a lot of like intellectual work. This is the setup for us to understand what's actually happening with the positions. And then, so my idea that we're going forward with this is that we actually have a lot of distinction, separation for how we these things seem like overly technical maybe, but this is how you will understand your body. We made all this stuff up called a open versus closed circuit in the work. So if I'm in down dog, there is a closed circuit between my hands, my feet. And so we get to talk about open versus closed circuit and how open versus closed circuits, when your feet are on the ground, your hands are on the ground, create this thing called plow force. And then fixed versus free. If I'm in a down dog and my arms are in these 2 positions, these 2 shoulder positions are basically exactly the same, but one, my hand is fixed, and the other, my spine is fixed. Or in this case, my arm. And so my hand is fixed here, and there's not just the loads, but if I don't understand these things, then there will be some things that sort of don't make sense. Why is this pose harder than this pose? And of course, when we look at things like posture, if you don't understand how open versus closed circuits change the load on your body, then we have ongoing problems. So if you can look at this picture, when Andre is leaning forward, when her butt is back, the back of her body, her posterior chain is loaded, gluteals and paraspinals. When her hips are forward, we call it the shaggy do, her abs and hip flexors are loaded. And this is one of the most common ways you'll see people slouch. Very few people have their butt back. Unless they're in actual pain, they'll tend to slouch with their hips back. And then they're loaded the posterior chain in a long position, and that's one of the reasons their body hurts. So then we go to the postures, and right now we're at about 14 poses, but we're scrunching up, reading up dog and cobra, or high chair, squat, and duck butt, lunges, and weather vane are getting collapsed. So the idea was, okay, if there's 12 to 17, the most we've ever had is 17 poses, and we take the time to really dive in, where down dog gets like 15 pages of a book, back bend gets 13 pages, 20 pages. We can then, in really understanding, okay, what's happening, what's going on with the spine, why is head position, how do we start defining what neutral is, all this stuff, so helpful. But then as we go through, the second half of Postures 2 is this, where we have the 10 categories we talked about before. There's over 600 variations of, it's more than this right now, but I'm tired of recalculating all the time. This is probably like a 2019 calculation. We're doing lots of variations, way more than 600. So we start with small joints, and you can see we got small joints, inside the small joints, hand, neck, ankles, calves, ankles and toes. We work on as shoulders. The standing on two legs, all of these variations, which include all the crazy warrior and weather vane variations. Weather vane is standing on one foot. All fours, all the down dog variations, all the hands and knees variations. Down dog, all of this stuff with down dog. And then all of this gets completed in the last document, which is we continue. We start kneeling, sitting. We've done all fours, lying face up, lying face down. And you can see all of these variations. And of course, special work is fun. There's lots of pictures need to get taken for this, but okay, we use bands in our practice. We use sticks in our practice. We use balls in our practice. Occasionally we use some weights. Okay, what does that look like? So this is a good example of what it would look like to sort of be structured out in the beginning. So I would sit and work for a few days on writing out all the different sections that would tell me what pictures I need to take. I go take the pictures, put them in it, and then repeat. The pictures inform what I get to do. So grateful. Thank you for this little tour. We are working hard. Today, this is, like I said, I'm working on a little bit of the down dog ankles problem, ankle mobility, and then probably doing a little bit more work on weather vane so that I know what pictures we get to take tomorrow. Grateful for you. It's coming along. My editor is having a baby, so the editing is basically stopped, but that's okay. We like babies and we like the editor, so and there she is. That's the editor. She's got a much better. Andrea can't slouch, so I have to get a different model to show slouching. So grateful for you. Appreciate you. I hope you can see the crazy amounts of work we've put in, the hundreds of thousands of words, and all of these pictures. It's crazy. And if you have any questions, just let us know, and we're grateful for you. And I'll add one of these videos here pretty soon. This is just a sort of an overall thing. I figured I'd let you see what we're working on, but we're gonna take some pictures tomorrow, maybe make some videos, and pull you guys in. Love to see you around, and if you have any questions, big love. Bye.